Welcome to Desert Wanderers. If you're new here, we bridge the gap between you and the person in the pew next to you. Today we have a special host, Father Cintra. He will be doing his Generational Catholicism series. This plays on the third week of every month and will be a new segment for our show on Desert Wanderers. We're so excited to bring this to you. Let's jump right into it.
How are you guys, Jake and Lindsay?
Doing good.
Well, yeah, let's get into it. So, I have some points here from this book about forming families, forming saints by Father Carter Griffin. The last episode before the one with Father Julio, the last episode I did with the big Dodges and the little Dodges, we got into human formation. So there are these four pillars of formation. They're first written for priestly formation, and they're human, spiritual, intellectual, and pastoral. And this priest, Father Carter Griffin, he has sort of adapted that for the family life, and he just adapted the last one, pastoral, to apostolic. So human, spiritual, intellectual, and apostolic. And we started getting into that, and we went over an overview of human formation and talked about what that is. And in the seminary, they talk about it in this way, that the human formation is really the foundation. If a seminarian comes in with a healthy human formation, then that provides a good soil to then receive a healthy spiritual and intellectual formation, which then allows him to receive a pastoral formation and go out and be a pastor. When we see a priest, we see him doing things, we see him doing pastoral things. So we can think that that's what priestly formation is limited to, is how to do tasks. But that's in a sense the least important. That's like the fruit of the tree. What's most important and what takes the most time and the most sensitivity and resourcefulness, I guess, is the first three: human, first the human, then the spiritual, and the intellectual on top of that. And I'm describing that here because I think that's a helpful lens for formation of children, for parenting, for generational Catholicism, for passing on the Catholic faith. It's what's most important are the human, the spiritual, and intellectual, and the apostolic comes as a fruit. But if sometimes we can focus on the apostolic at the cost of the other three. And within those three, the human is really the most foundational. I don't want to say it's the most important because they're all important, obviously, but without a human formation, there's no soil for the other ones to develop. And so a seminarian that goes into the seminary with a really rocky or wounded human formation that can be healed, God can heal that, God can overcome that and transform that, redeem that. But that needs to be paid attention to. And then same thing, I think, for parents, because before you guys are parents and before anyone's a parent, we're first sons and daughters. And so if we as sons and daughters didn't receive that healthy human formation, and now we're trying to be parents, that is going to add complications to that whole dynamic. And so we want to first seek our own human formation, our own healing, our own development in ourselves, which can then help us to then pass that on to the next generation and facilitate the transmission of generational Catholicism. Any initial thoughts on that before I get into these particular points I have prepared?
I think it sounds really solid, um, and it tracks. I was talking to a priest that he works at the seminary, at a seminary, and works with the seminarians on this, and he was talking about how he was out with some of the seminarians in public, and somebody came up to him kind of on the side and said, "Wow, these guys are so normal." And he said that that was one of the highest compliments he could get because he's like, he related it to um, like grace builds on nature, you know?
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, and so the natural, just the natural design of God's, human formation, like in the home, growing up, developing, um, grace builds on that. So like being normal is kind of like a baseline. I mean, I am just reiterating what you're saying, but I think I think there's something to that.
Mhm.
It's really important.
Yeah, talking about being normal, I was having a conversation with one of our diocesan seminarians, and I won't name him just in case he wouldn't want to be named, but um he said we were talking about being normal, and I said, but do we really want to be normal? Like, look at the world.
Mhm.
Is normal really
Mhm.
a goal that we have?
Mhm.
And he made the distinction between being normal and being common. You
Mhm.
said,
Mhm.
yes, you want to be normal, but you don't want to be common. Or like your children, I
Mhm.
think we were talking about raising children and like, do we want them to be normal? And I think of like the norm, I guess,
Mhm.
in
Mhm.
society.
Mhm.
Um, but I thought that was a helpful distinction to
Yeah.
myself, um, that I don't want our children to be common or, like what I'm
Right.
seeing in the world, but
Yeah.
normal is maybe a good goal.
Yeah. Right. Exactly. Yeah, because what's normal, yeah, that's great. Normal, not common. What's normal, not what's common, but what's normal is to be human. To be human is normal.
Right.
And
God made
that
us what we were
exactly.
created for.
Exactly. Yeah. And then God became man, God became human himself, which is, yeah, this is what's distinctly Christian, right? We can have, there are other religions, there are other worldviews that can talk about de developing our humanity or human skills or human virtues, and that's good. But no one is going to go as far as saying that God Himself became human and redeemed humanity from within. And so that's what He wants to do with us. He doesn't want to make us any less human. It's not like being human is a problem that needs to be sidestepped in order to be with God or in order to become a saint or in order to go to heaven. No, it's precisely by becoming more human. Well, maybe we could say it this way, it's precisely by becoming human that God saved us, that God redeemed us. And so now our path to become one with Him is one to be fully human, which is going to be it's going to happen simultaneously with becoming fully divine, because Jesus himself is fully God and fully divine. Therefore, to become more and more with Him, more and more united to Him, more and more conformed to Him, will mean simultaneously that we become more human and more divine. Not more common, because most of the world is not moving in that direction. They're moving in the opposite direction. They're trying to become their own gods, as opposed to the one true God, the one incarnate God. And therefore they're trying to do that. They're trying to sidestep their humanity in order to become divine, um, which is only causing them to become less and less human. And by them, I mean me. So that's great. Yeah, thanks for that. So this book, and it's not going to be exclusive to this, but what it does is for the human formation pillar, it outlines five five virtues, and they call it order, sincerity, chastity, fortitude, and magnanimity. And of course, those are not the only virtues that could be listed under here, but these are really important ones and um, a good place to start. And I thought we could try to talk about the first two during our time here. So order and sincerity. And in regards to order, it starts by just describing how difficult our lives are today, how many different demands and opportunities and duties and responsibilities and distractions we all have, not only in our individual lives, but then in our collective lives, within families, within work, within friends and community and so forth. And that can make it really, really difficult to develop order, or orderliness is another way of saying that. Um, and the common approach is to kind of just be on reactive mode and to just, try to put fires as they come up, which of course is part of life. We have to do that. But it also says there is another way to handle the rising demands of modern life. We must set realistic expectations. We must establish clear priorities for our lives. Above all, we must learn to practice flexible firmness in maintaining our standards of order. So, what are some ways that you guys try to do that, and or what are some ways that you remember your parents doing that with you? And we've already talked about things that would fit in this category in previous conversations, and we can revisit those. But yeah, but now with this mindset, okay, so now we're kind of going more systematically and have this this order, pun intended, I guess, of trying to approach these topics. And so, yeah, what did it look like, and what does it look like now to set realistic expectations, to have clear priorities, and to practice flexible firmness?
It's making me think right off the bat of our first conversation with the other couples, and the Flanagans were talking about saying no to things.
Mm.
Um, because to have priorities, whether intentionally or unintentionally, we're saying no to other things. And there are so many demands, or there's so many things commonly pulling us in other directions that it's easy to get swept up into all of it.
Yeah.
Could you, if you're comfortable sharing it, could you be specific? What are some things that you've intentionally said no to that you think have helped you as individually, a couple, and a family?
I mean, just like simple things like keeping evenings free. Not that we keep every evening free, but like we're pretty intentional about like having some free evenings so that we're not just overbooking and running ragged, running from one thing to another, or being busy ourselves. Like, um, we're very intentional about like not overdoing it and having some just evenings where you know, we're not doing something. We're not going out of the home. We're not,
And there's nothing scheduled.
yeah, we're not talking to friends, um, we're just eating dinner, praying the rosary, and getting the kids to bed, or we go to bed ourselves. But um, that's one thing, and that's good for us too, which probably translates to being good for the children. Just having some time in the evening to talk to each other. So that's difficult throughout the day.
Yeah, I would add that another priority I think that we've made, and I think that there's a lot of different, there's different answers to this question. I don't think there's a right answer of which no's you have to say. Like, um, I think there are some foundational principles that maybe many families could share, but that could all look really different in practice. Um, but something that is a high priority to us is relationships within our home, like our relationship with our kids, and our kids' relationships with one another. And so one priority that we have, that's one priority that we have, and one way that we have um, chosen to order that, I suppose, is by homeschooling. So our kids are home all day, every day with one another. Um, and something that I really love about that is that their um, their closest and most favored relationships are with each other. I love that, their closest friends are their siblings, and just the community that that fosters in our family. And I think that being home, yeah, that it makes it feel a little less ragged even in the evenings because we do also have all day. Like Jake isn't home all day, but the rest of us are, and I think that that helps. But there's a lot of extracurricular or, just activities for the kids, whether it be sports or classes or lessons or, I don't know, theater, orchestra. I mean, there's a dance, there's a million opportunities, and those can be really tempting. Like, oh, this would be so good for them. Oh, they would love to do this thing. They would have so much fun. And we say no to a lot of them, and that's hard often.
Yeah. And something I was reflecting on um, just recently and um, like multiple times recently, it's something I've been thinking about, um, is just having time to like think and wonder. Um, and I think like we've said no to TV. We don't have a TV in our house. We watch, I mean, it's not like we never watch TV, but it's pretty rare. And it's usually like intentional, like we'll watch something or we'll, we watched a documentary on some sisters, or we watched The Sound of Music. Um, but it's not like a part of our daily life to watch TV. Um,
Maggie told me the other day that that's the only movie she's ever seen.
well, to be truthful,
It's a slight exaggeration, but not really.
there's a couple parts that we skipped for the kids because I just didn't feel like they were ready for them. Um, so, use your discretion, uh, listeners.
Uh,
But yeah, pretty much the only movie I've ever seen. Um, But we say no to TV so that they can have time to think, have time to wonder, have time to play outside. Um, I mean, like one of our kids likes to draw, and I have thought about that many times about like if he didn't have time of silence and just like time to wonder and where most people would say like be bored, like he probably wouldn't spend time drawing or coloring.
Hmm.
It's not that exciting if you have this thing like grabbing your attention, all
Hmm.
the time. Um, but it's exciting if you have time to think and you're a little bored and you want to find something to do. It can be exciting to draw.
Hmm. Hmm.
Go ahead.
No, no, go ahead.
I was just going to say, so I think it's important to provide that environment um, for kids
But it's
and for
easy
ourselves.
to take that, like he loves to draw. We should take him to an art class. Just think
Mm-hmm.
of how well he could draw if he had some, that's the temptation in all of these things. And
Hmm.
maybe I have that temptation more than you do. Um, but that's the thing. We can sit here and be like, wow, I'm so glad he has time to draw. But in the back of my mind, I'm like, how could we help foster that? We should take him to the art class. Like that's and
Hmm.
there's
Hmm.
another thing.
That's a
Hmm.
good point.
Hmm. Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, and of course it's not a bad thing to yeah, to seek um, mentors and tutors and teachers and resources to help develop those skills. But yeah, but it, your point there, I think, is that you can be you can just you can just easily become um, one more source of distraction for the family and one more source of busyness and so it's a great um, it's a great area to practice flexible firmness, right? It's like so flexible firmness in maintaining our standards of order. It's like the reason why um, drawing is important and helpful and an integral part of the family life is because it's something that's being born out of the way that the family is ordered and it's fostering uh, the relationships within the family. If it the moment it takes on a different purpose, then that has to be discerned carefully. Like is this actually going to contribute to the end that we want to focus on? And if not, then we got to be firm on those boundaries. Like, no, that's something we're going to say no to in order to continue to say yes to the dynamics that we want to foster. Is that basically what you're saying?
Yeah. Something that just came to mind is um just like you were talking about the importance of formation in human formation in the seminarians and or in humans um and how that's kind of foundational. So it made me think about um like professional sports players. You know, it's kind of a thing in current society to want to be a professional sports player, right? For kids, like that's a popular thing. And then we can start trying to work towards that at super young ages. They're playing sports at like 3, and all of a sudden the entire family, like that is the priority, the focus, like to play sports. And I think um, if our priority is human formation, there's very few and maybe sports is one of them, I don't actually know. But there's very, very few professions or skills that can't be learned later. Um, there's, there's like, even with homeschooling, I'm really fascinated by the idea that, we give a basic formation, but if, one subject is maybe slightly lacking or whatever, a kid could take a high school or college class, or, these days, YouTube, or we could go back in time and like read a book and learn so much to catch up in a very short period of time. But it seems that the human formation is probably the part that's hardest to catch up on, and that would, so then we can prioritize our time with young children um, on the human formation part, and know that all these other things, if it's important to them, like drawing, if he really wanted to take an art class, he could take an art class later, or, and not, like you said, not that you can't take an art class, but just that the priority is a human formation because that's the most important at this point in their lives.
Yes. Yes, that's great. And just, yeah, to add one more descriptor to that, it's like maybe the reason, or part of the reason why we so quickly go to that, we ourselves, but then also you guys as parents in regards to your kids, of like, oh, I need to help him or her to develop these skills, because that may be something that will earn him or her money down the road, and not necessarily money to be wealthy, but money to survive, to provide for a family and so forth. And so it's like, I'm gonna try to teach my kid how to um, be a good artist or a good soccer player, a good football player, so that, because this is going to help him to produce down the road. It has this kind of production um, destination, I think. And let me unspool one more thought, and then you say, tell me if you agree. But um, as opposed to um, the focus on relationships, right? It's like the most important thing that we as people, the most important skill that we can develop as people, and it's not a skill like the other skills are, um, but I'm using the word skill intentionally. The most important skill we can develop as people in order to live, in order to be happy, in order to um, even have a good job and um, have prosperous careers and so forth, is the skill of developing relationships and maintaining relationships and nurturing relationships. That's the most important area there is, and that flows out of that human formation. And um, and so by focusing on that, we actually are helping them to, have good lives down the road. Um, but it's a different focus from, say, focusing on production. Like I need to make sure you know how to do math and science and athletics, because you're going to need to earn money down the road. And if you don't really learn those skills now, then that's going to hurt you. That's going to hurt you down. So I'm trying to, I guess what I'm trying to do is, like, I'm trying to empathize with parents that do focus on those things because they want the best for their kids, and they don't want their kids to miss out on opportunities to develop. But I'm also wanting to say that there's actually something higher, there's something better that can be provided for their kids, which is healthy relationships. And one last anecdote, which is that like I notice when I go to somebody's house, if their kids want to be around me, not because of me, but because of the guest. The kids want to be around the guest. And as opposed to the kids just want to go do something. They just want to go, you know, play their game um, or watch their TV or look at their screen. And and it to me that's a little reflection of that. It's like, what is the priority for these? What is the priority in this household? Is it is it entertainment, or is it connection and relationship and so forth? And I guess our hypothesis is that the relationships, the relationship focus is actually going to serve them better down the road than the other foci are.
Go
Yeah.
ahead if you want.
I was just thinking, like, as someone who hires, who works with hiring, I imagine I guess you could speak to it, but just you're looking for a more well-rounded person who can have relationships, who could, receive correction, rather than having some particular skill or set of skills. Like,
Yeah,
Mm.
that's very true. Yeah, we often say that. So I work at Nap Auto Parts, and I'm over the HR department, and we often say that, like, we can teach parts, but it's hard to teach the soft skills.
Mm.
So
Mhm.
so it does, yeah, so then it does help with the production, even though that's not the end goal.
Mhm.
It's
Mhm.
also
Exactly.
beneficial in that. I also thought of how your dad, Jake's dad owns the company, and he says, we're in the business of people. We just happen to sell parts, which
That's
fits right
beautiful.
in with that.
Yeah,
yeah, that's cool.
that's great. That's
Cool.
great. Yeah, it's like it could have been another company. It could have been whatever, sports equipment. It could have been bookshelves. It could have been computer chips. The the widget is not important. It's not like, oh, I have such a great passion for cars, which maybe he does, and maybe it was part of it, but that's not the focus. Like, it's not like I have a great passion for cars, and therefore I'm going to figure out how to spend the rest of my life around cars and help other people to also um, have good cars and enjoy their cars and have reliable cars. It's not that. It's no, I like working with people, developing employees, and and here's one opportunity that opened up. And I don't know if this is historically accurate, but at least um, philosophically accurate that this opportunity opened up. And so now I'm gonna use that as a means to an end. The end is really relationships and people. And so that's a great focus or a great analogy for the family, right? That it's not about developing their skills, but rather, or their hard skills, like you said, but the soft skills of relating to one another. Um, and what about, okay, so let's say I'm my dad or my mom or my mom. Well, I'm not a mom, but let's say I'm a dad, and let's say there's a woman listening to this, and they're a mom, and and I think, yeah, that sounds nice, but um, you guys have really great kids that are just great to be around, and I love my kids, but um, I it's really hard to spend that much time with them. It's hard for me. It's hard for them. We don't get along well all the time, and and frankly, oftentimes like my own woundedness comes to the surface, and I don't I didn't receive this kind of formation from my parents, and so my own distance towards my parents comes up, maybe whether I'm aware of it or not, um, so it ends up being if I were to live this life that you're kind of describing, uh, that would actually create more problems for us. And so it's actually better for our family dynamics for us to have more separation. Of course, we still spend time together, we do things together, but to have more separation is more beneficial for us. What do you think? What would you say to that?
Well, I would start with like it's hard for us too. It's not easy. Our woundedness often comes out. Our lack of human formation um, comes out, and it's it's hard, but it's also um, like that's something we try to focus on for ourselves. Like try to work on our own brokenness and lack of, areas where we lack some of that.
Yeah, there's a presupposition there that it is different here, that we're not facing the same struggles with vices and the same discord and the same temptations and just difficulties. Something that I've heard many, many times is, oh, you homeschool? Oh, I just don't have the patience to homeschool. I'm like, I don't think that I have any like particular gift at patience that makes me able to homeschool. We're just here, whether it's homeschooling or being around our kids, whatever the question is, like we're just here doing what trying to prioritize these things and begging God for the grace, you know, for whatever for whatever that is. And whether that's like the patience or um and it's so hard to say like, oh, we could never do that when you haven't tried, when the only when you're living this harried, like crazy life because you're afraid to be home or you're afraid of the relationships. Um, like you kind of have to go all in before you can determine whether all in is going to work for you or not, if that makes any sense.
Mhm. Yeah,
And
and
then, oh, go
oh, go
ahead.
ahead. Well, just one little caveat is that, um, yeah, I think this question that I'm asking applies to the homeschooling question, but it also applies to other things like sports and just too many activities and just a lot of, um, yeah. I'm thinking back to your instance, Jake, about or your anecdote from a few months ago about on Sunday, one of the children saying, "Dad, I really like Sundays because you're just here. You're here with us. You don't have to go to work and lunch is not rushed. You all just get to be together." So even if it's, outside of a school day, that's not the point. It's like, okay, what are we fostering as a family? Are we desiring to spend more and more time together? And not 24/7. We all need our own time too. But yeah, but is I guess what I'm wanting to ask about under the surface is when you recognize an area of woundedness, like you said, Jake, or when you recognize a friction, a tension between you and your children, where does that take you? And in the moment, sure, but also as you get to reflect on it on an ongoing basis, where does that lead you?
Um, I mean, in a perfect world, it leads me to reflection and like trying to fix that piece of me. But I often get reminded that like between the time it happens or I get frustrated or um, whatever, I discover this wound, the the time that it happens and until the time I'm reminded of it again, like I realize, oh, I haven't done anything to work on that. Like I'm
Mm-hmm.
often reminded of that.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
but in a perfect world or when I react well, um, I've either talked to other people about it, I've talked to Lindsay about it, thought about it, prayed about it. Um, like why am I reacting that way?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and maybe you don't notice that you're saying this, but it's like it's a given that where it leads you is your own growth, your own healing, as opposed to um, well, I have to figure out how to change them, and if I can't, since I can't, I have to figure out how to develop distance between us.
Mm.
You see the difference?
Can I go back just a little bit?
Please,
And
yeah.
something else I was thinking about was that the other skills we were talking about, developing human formation and things now, or when the kids are growing and developing. I think, Lindsay, I think you said it's harder to develop those things later, but there's like there's a limited time, from when a child's born to when a child needs to kind of move on to whatever they're going to do, go like go into a convent, get married, um, become a mom for the girls, or the boys like become a priest, get a job, get married, raise a family. Um, it's much harder and you have much less time to try to figure those things out later too. Like it's really important to try to do those things young. And so if like human formation is important, then there's only a limited time where it's like prime time to do it. You know what I mean?
And it can only be done in relationship, right? Like it takes us like bumping up against each other day after day after day to like soften the edges and um yeah, like rub off the scales of all our
The barnacles, is that the word you're looking for?
the the dragon scales. But
Well, and I also think, sorry, go ahead.
well, I think that that's precisely why it's tempting to run, like to go do anything else outside,
Hmm.
because relationships are really difficult, and that's where we're like faced with our own problems, with our own wounds and insecurities and preferences even.
Hmm.
And that's really the best place for us to grow in our human formation and to grow in virtue is by being in relationship with the same people, over extended periods of time for great amounts of time.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, beautiful.
And I think it's also a temptation to like seek seek these things outside. Like
Hmm.
you were talking about production. I don't think that's
Hmm.
the only motivation. I think maybe maybe you're right about the end goal, but
Hmm.
like I've often heard sports is like all these good soft skills that they'll learn, like
Hmm.
teamwork,
Yeah.
working with others, being, not selfish. It's not all about yourself,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
those kinds of things. But I think I would argue that those things can be learned in the home,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and it's probably a better um, avenue or better place to learn them
Mm-hmm.
is in the home.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I think that we can't ignore there are some opportunities where, or not some opportunities, but some like situations where it may be fitting to
Mm-hmm.
put your kid in sports or
Mm-hmm.
in school or these
Mm-hmm.
things that we're kind of talking about that we say no to. But there may be some family situations where that might be the best thing for kids, but I think it is something that needs to be thought about and
Mm-hmm.
really discerned.
Yeah.
And
And it's not, yeah, the sports gets a bad rap. It's
Yeah.
not like sports isn't bad insofar as it's furthering the priority of relationship and family life.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
like, it's definitely not that you can't play sports by any means, like, not that we
Right.
think, but
Yeah, I mean, I still haven't given up on my dream to be a professional soccer player,
yeah,
so you're really
see?
kind of bursting my bubble here. No, but yeah, it's clearly, yeah, there's a lot of good in sports and a lot of virtue can be developed through sports, clearly. But but yeah, yeah, but I'm gonna double down. It's like, I mean, we think about it this way, like the professional athletes who are models of virtue are a minority. They stand out. I mean, they have great virtues, like they're hard workers, they persevere, they're courageous, etc. But we almost expect professional athletes to not have um, healthy lives, healthy families, healthy relationships, you know, multiple divorces and problems with their children and drugs, alcohol, crime. Like when those things come on the news, it's not it's not too surprising. When we hear of a professional athlete who has been married for a long time and has many children and doesn't do drugs or alcohol or abuse alcohol um, and then all the more so that they're religious, uh, that's an anomaly. And so uh, that shows that there's something about sports, maybe the sports culture, right? If we were to take sports and put it in a lab and just analyze sports for itself, then we can derive a lot more good from it. But the sports culture as it is, and in fact, even I have I had an experience once where I knew a kid who I knew him primarily in one environment of like around his family and around his school and around his church, and I knew him to be one way, kind of more relational, more caring, more um, expressive, expressive in an authentic way, more inquisitive. But then I happened to go and be around him around his sports team, and he was very involved in that sports team. A lot of practice, a lot of hours of practice a week. And that sport team had a very different culture. Most of those kids were not from families who were involved in church and who were really involved with their parents, and they were there really. They were great athletes and contributors to that team, so they contributed to that. They were learning those skills of teamwork and selflessness and so forth in regards to that sport, but that culture was developing in a different way, and now that a different side of that kid was on display, and a lot of the good things that I was seeing in him in the other setting were kind of squashed and hidden in the sports setting, because there's peer pressure and there's the innate kind of inclination to conform and so forth. And so, yeah, the sports thing is a complicated beast, and yeah, I think it behooves us to just really be really discerning about it. Like, is it actually contributing to the life of the family? And we're not going to get to the next virtue, which is sincerity. That's okay, but I'll read the last couple of quotes here that I had for order, just in case there's anything that we want to add as we start coming to a close here. Which from St. Augustine. St. Augustine said, "Safeguard order, and order will safeguard you." And from Fulton Sheen, "The order imposed by the Church's teachings might be a rock in the sea surrounded by great walls. Inside of those walls, the children may dance and sing and play as they please. Take away the walls, and you would find all the children huddled in the center of the island, afraid to play, afraid to sing, afraid to dance, afraid of falling into the sea." Anything strike you guys in either of those?
Both of them are really good. And I think it's so true with children. Like if they feel safe, if they feel grounded, secure, they can develop and they can flourish.
Yeah, and I think there's another element there of having boundaries. Um, and I think that's our role as parents, is to provide those boundaries so that they can feel free to do, play, sing, dance, whatever the other um, actions were.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Ultimately, virtue is ordered towards freedom. I think the culture has the inverse approach to virtue, and the and sometimes we Catholics approaching virtue, and especially a virtue such as order, we may think that it's about restraining freedom, but it's really about disciplining our fallen human nature and perfecting that. And so, yeah, like you mentioned in the beginning, Jake, of grace, perfecting nature. Our nature has been corrupted, and left to its own devices, it's going to lead us into slavery, not into freedom, but into slavery. And so grace actually wants to perfect our nature so that we can be more and more free. And this image is a good one, that the church's teachings. So if we're on an island in the middle of the sea, or on top of a rock in the middle of the sea, if there's no wall around that rock, we're going to be constrained to the center. But if we put walls around that island, we're actually going to be free to explore the whole island, to explore the whole rock. And that's true in regards to how we raise kids, or for me, how I teach in the parish, or how I develop programs, or what have you. But more importantly, it's true in regards to our own lives, right? The more that I can have flexible firmness in regards to that rock, the more free I'm going to be to run around in on the rock. And so if it comes to the family life, when it comes to the family life, would you say this, that noticing those moments of tension, those areas of tension within the couple and within the couple and their children, that the temptation may be, well, let's just take down a wall and build a raft and go to another island. But that's actually, not only is that perilous because there are storms at sea, but also it's actually hindering our own development and therefore our own growth and freedom, which can only happen by facing those tensions together and by bringing the Lord into those tensions, by exposing those tensions to the Lord in prayer. And my question was not supposed to include all those things, but generally, or in the big picture, does that fit with what you've been observing?
I'm really sorry, I lost your question. What's
I
your
did too.
question?
Um,
It made me think of things, but
Go ahead. What did it make you think of?
um, I don't know. It wasn't, sorry.
Just what is the image of the rock and the wall? Is it helpful for your own growth? Your own growth in holiness, growth in human formation, growth in relationship with God, in relationships with others?
So something that came to mind was this is actually an observation that I think it was my dad and I, but I could be wrong, that we were just talking and we kind of had this thought, but we it's not uncommon for um, in our culture today there is some fear in some of our young people, like they're like moving back home later in life, like people are getting married later and later, like fear of commitment or missing out on things, or
Mm-hmm.
um, it's like this lack of independence almost.
Mm-hmm.
We were reflecting on like our culture is so quick to push independence on like a 3-year-old and a
Mm-hmm.
4-year-old and a 5-year-old, like
Mm-hmm.
getting them out of the house, like in their, they want to be home, but it's like, well, they need to be independent and we need to push this independence on them.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it's produced good fruits. I think it's caused like a lack of independence later in life because
Mm-hmm.
there's the foundation is missing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so like these walls you're talking about, like the children need an opportunity to develop
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
in a safe environment before they go outside the walls,
Mm-hmm.
because
Yes.
they will have to at some point.
Yes.
Yeah, and if we could think about the island as, um, correct me if I'm misapplying this, but if we can think of the island as our duty, like what we ought to be doing, what we're called to do as a wife and mother, that is my duty to be a wife, to be a mother. The catechism says that as parents, we're the primary educators of our children. So if taking down the wall and leaving the island is leaving that duty, like then I'm missing the means to my own sanctification. Like that island is where I'm going to be sanctified
Mhm.
by doing my duties.
Mhm. Mhm.
So whether or not they prove difficult or whether they feel impossible, like I've lost the opportunity completely if I've left those
Mhm.
duties.
Beautiful. Yes. Yeah. And just to close on a personal and hopefully a direction of hope for us personally is I'm reading Father Burke Masters autobiography. It's called Home Grand Slam for God. He was our retreat director last week at our priest retreat. He's a diocesan priest out in Indiana, but he was a baseball player and then he became a priest. And he was not born in a Catholic family, raised in a Catholic family, but in a very in a human family, in a family with good human virtues. And they didn't push baseball on him, but baseball kind of grew out of of his healthy relationships with his parents and with his older brothers, his two brothers. They spent all their whole upbringing together, and then together they grew and developed different skills. But in reading that autobiography, he is associated with both the John Paul II Healing Center and with the Institute for Priesthood Formation, and so I've known him just from a distance through those places, but he's received a lot of this kind of formation in regards to healing and so forth. And so when he wrote that autobiography, he was very vulnerable in what he shared and how the Lord loved him and healed him and so forth. And but him just describing some anecdotes from his childhood and how his parents kind of intervened in really good ways through his childhood. Uh, for me, um, it was really tough sometimes to be reading that because my dad died when I was a baby, so he wasn't around at all, and my mom has yeah lots of uh, lots of good qualities about her, but in many ways she wasn't present in large part because she couldn't be present because um, she was working a lot to take care of, to provide for us and so forth. And so and my siblings are all much older than me. The next one is 8 years older, six or 8 years older. Um, but so my in my upbringing, I kind of felt like an only child, and I had friends, so I felt like I had a little community. But in key moments, I didn't have anyone. I was kind of on my own, um, kind of trying to sort things out. And uh, developed more and more like isolation and self-reliance. And so reading those moments like brought all the that kind of that woundedness to the surface. And and thankfully, I mean, I've been kind of navigating through this all through seminary and then all through and these couple of years of priestly life with spiritual direction and counseling and so forth. But now I'm at a point where like those things can be poked and it's like something that I welcome, not because I like being hurt or something, but rather because it gives me this opportunity to go to prayer and to expose those things to the Lord and to not only recognize that He was with me all along, He was fathering me all along, but also that He is with me now and He's wanting to go into those areas and heal me so that I can um, actually be more dependent, right? To tie back to what you were saying, Jake, like, yeah, there's this high push on the independence. Um, and there's some truth in that, there's some goodness in that, but I think from a Christian perspective, that's actually upside down. Like Jesus was utterly dependent on the Father, utterly, like not one ounce of independence in him. And and that's actually the right path for us is to grow in dependence of the Father, which includes growth in virtue and our ability to carry out our responsibilities and be mature, responsible adults, which is kind of what we mean by independent. But not in a way that's apart from the Father and apart from healthy relationships. And I still have inclinations of, I'm just going to be independent. I'm going to, if I have this tension at work or with brother priests or with parishioners, it's like, I'm gonna figure it out. I'm gonna solve it. I'm gonna fix it. And it's like there's an invitation to say, okay, let me become a little smaller, a little more humble, a little more dependent, a little more aware of my own need of healing, my own need of salvation. And so I share that to open up, but also to, hopefully give parents an invitation into that path of like, when there are tensions in the home, that the Lord may be wanting to do something in your own heart that's going to be really good for you. So I invite you to be open to that and to walk with the Lord into those areas and keep going forward and upwards. Closing thoughts? I'm just going to keep talking because I'm really uncomfortable right now, so I'm just going to talk really fast.
Your last words, I feel compelled to just say, like, it's a journey for us. Like, we don't, our kids are all young. They're all, 12 is the oldest. We don't have, all these success stories after the fact. Like, we're doing what we think is what we should be doing, and what we've, read or talked about with other people, or what we feel convicted to do. But by no means are we, like, do we have it all figured out? And it's very painful at times, and our wounds surface, and we try to work through them as best we can, and try to not pass them to our children. Like, try to work on them, knowing that we are passing some of them on to our children, and having patience with ourselves and trying.
Beautiful. Any final thought there, Lindsay? I don't want to leave you out. No pressure.
No.
Okay. Well, good. Thank you, guys. Appreciate your time. Thanks for making time.
Thank you, Father.
No, it's hard to make time amidst all the demand. So thank you very much. Have a wonderful day. God bless.
You too. Thank you, Father.
Bye.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Desert Wanderers. If you liked it, give us a thumbs up as well as subscribe down below. We're produced by Salt and Light Radio, so you can find us on social platforms at Salt and Light Radio or Desert Wanderers Podcast. We produce episodes every week and we launch them for you on Wednesdays. So make sure to tune in for next week's episode, and we'll see you then.